Hello everyone, welcome back to Decking Cards. So today we'll be taking a look at the last problem of the Asian Pacific Math Olympiad 2026. Now some people have pointed out that this problem has appeared in similar forms in other places, but this is still quite an interesting combinatorics problem and the solution features some really neat ideas. So I'm still excited to share with you on this problem. Now without further ado, let us take a look at the problem statement. The question is as follows. Let n be a positive integer. There exists n times n plus 1 rooms arranged in a n plus 1 times n grid. So in my picture here, n is 4, so I have a 5 by 4 grid, and each square is basically a room. For each two adjacent rooms, there is a door between them, which I denote by a brown line segment here. Find the number of ways to choose a subset of doors and lock them such that there are two rooms S and G satisfying the following properties. S is in the first row and G is the last row. One can reach G from S only through unlocked doors. So basically, we want to select a subset of these doors to keep unlocked so that I can move from somewhere in the first row to somewhere in the last row through the unlocked doors. And I need to find the number of ways to be able to make such a choice. Okay, now I'm going to go straight into the solution because the key part of this solution involves a pretty, I would say hard to motivate idea, but if you have seen a similar problem before, then you will be able to apply the idea quite readily, right? Okay, so rather than trying to motivate the idea, I'll let you see the idea and experience it for yourself. So let's go into the solution. And then before that, I'll make one simplified assumption first and then fix the assumption at the end of the proof. So let's assume for now that all the first row and last row doors are unlocked. I will take these doors out of the picture first, okay? And let's now actually start the proof. So first, I'll transform the problem into a graph problem. So I'll let G be a graph with vertices A, B, and the rooms in between. Okay, what do I mean by this? So I remove the vertical doors here in the first row. So this is just one giant room now. I'll call that vertex A. So this is one giant vertex, okay? And the last row also one giant vertex. Then all the white rooms in between, each of them is just one vertex. And then the edges represent doors, okay? So you see here the adjacent rooms are connected by a door. And same thing, A can go to this white room. So A has a door edge, okay, connecting from A to this white vertex and so on. Okay, so hopefully this picture is clear. This transformation is quite clear to you. Okay, so this next part is also quite intuitive. So what we are going to do is look at spanning subgraphs. So spanning subgraphs basically here means selecting a subset of the edges. And SG is going to denote the set of spanning subgraphs. Basically, it will contain the ways of selecting a subset of the edges. Let's take a look at example here. So in this example, the solid lines are the edges I select in my spanning subgraphs. The dotted lines are edges I did not select in the spanning subgraph. Okay, and basically the solid line will correspond to unlocked doors, while the not selected edges are like the locked doors, so you cannot go through them anymore. And so what we are going to do is say that a spanning subgraph H is good if there is a path from A to B, which is basically saying I can go through the unlocked doors to reach B. But in this case, this example H depicted here is bad because there's no path from A to B. Okay, so my unlocked doors choice here don't let me move from A to B. Okay, so the whole point here is now I want to find out how many good spanning subgraphs are there. Okay, that's the whole gist of this problem. So again, pretty intuitive description in terms of graph theory. And so here comes the main key idea of this proof, which is to define a transpose graph. So from a graph, a spanning subgraph H, I'm going to construct another spanning subgraph called its transpose. I'll define the transpose graph FH to be another spanning subgraph as follows. Okay, so just put aside the symbol for now. If I explain in the picture, it's way clearer and very easy to understand. Okay, so let's look at the white graph first, my original graph. Okay, and let's put aside whether the question of whether a graph H is selected or not in the spanning subgraph. Okay, I'm just going to describe how G, the full graph, is first transposed to FG. Okay, so let's look at the white edges. You have 4 perpendicular edges here, right? 4 sort of perpendicular lines here. They are perpendicular to A and B's, right? So this is like perpendicular index 1, perpendicular index 2, perpendicular index 3, perpendicular index 4. In my transpose graph, orange, my A and B are now sitting this way. Again, I have perpendicular index 1, perpendicular index 2, perpendicular index 3, perpendicular index 4. So the 4 perpendicular is still 4 perpendicular here, right? And of course, because my transpose graph is going to be it should have the same shape, right? Okay, then I have 3 parallel white kind of collection here, right? So this is like parallel index 1, parallel index 2, parallel index 3. Again, by parallel, I mean like parallel to my direction of A and B. So in the orange, again, I have parallel index 1, parallel index 2, parallel index 3. Okay, so now, how do I know whether an orange edge is selected or not selected? How do I determine this? The way you determine this, very easy. You just look at the cross. At the crossing, if the white one is not selected, you select orange one. Correspondingly, if the white one is selected, then you don't select orange one. It's as simple as that. So just draw this diagram, flip the selection, and that's your transpose graph. Okay. How do I describe this in symbols? Well, I have to set up some indexing to describe my edges, and this is what this whole thing is doing. So if you are curious, I'm just going to explain one example. So V here is for the perpendicular direction, H is for the parallel one. Okay, so I just use the perpendicular one as an example. So if you look at this orange one, okay, it is perpendicular index 1, position 2. So in this perpendicular index 1 line here, position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4. Okay, so this is 1, 2. So V of 1, 2 is selected if and only if V of 2, 1 is not selected. So 2, 1 is perpendicular index 2, position 1. So indeed, this is selected if and only if this is not selected. So that's why I just look at the cross and flip the selection choice. And I do this for every cross. So the parallel one is the same. For this parallel, this one will correspond to the white edge here. So selected if only if this is not selected, and so on. Yeah, so easy peasy way to describe the transpose. Okay, so hopefully the idea of constructing this transpose is now clear to you, even though it's probably a pain to write it down on paper. Now, what is actually good about this transpose function? 2 things. The first one is on this slide, which is that f of h is h itself. So if I take a spanning subgraph, I transpose and then I transpose it again, I'll get back the original graph. And that is pretty obvious because not selected becomes selected, then goes back to not selected. So yeah, quite easy to check this. And therefore, f is its own inverse, means that f is a bijection on SG. Okay, so that's the first thing that is good. And the second thing that is good, and this is the key idea, in fact, the only one we need for this proof, which is that H is good if and only if its transpose is bad. Okay, let's take a look at this proof. So suppose H is good. So we prove left to right first. Suppose H is good, which means there's a path from A to B, a top to bottom path. Okay. If on the contrary FH is also good, then there's a path from A to B which will be left to right. And this will cross the top to bottom path. And at the crossing point, it will be a contradiction because you cannot have both the orange and the white edge selected at the crossing point. So FH must be bad. Okay, quite clear. And now let's do the other direction. So for the other direction, I'll prove the contrapositive, which means suppose H is bad, I'll show that FH is good. Okay, so let's say H is bad. Now what I will do is consider the largest connected component containing A. Let me go back to the previous slide for a brief moment. So the largest connected component containing A here is like A, and this vertex here, because there's an edge here, then this vertex, this. So this part that's hanging off A and this part, that forms the largest connected component. So over here I have this, remember this hanging part and this hanging part. And what I'm going to do is I will visualize this thing as a polynomial. Okay, what do I mean by this? Basically, I draw back the rooms. Yeah, so I draw back the unit square, and the unit square of the vertices that are in the connected component, I'll basically put them inside this diagram. This is my polynomial. Okay, so this, all the rooms in A, this vertex, this vertex, this vertex, this vertex, this vertex, this vertex. So it gives me this diagram over here. Now, look at the boundary of the polynomial. Okay, so I have the boundary here. Now you notice some of them is color orange, some is color yellow. Okay, basically some parts of the boundary is not going to be inside FG. Because like if you look at the diagram of the previous slide, right, the orange edges only starts like, all these are orange edges. This part, this is my, remember this is my perpendicular index 1, this part is my perpendicular index 2, this part is my perpendicular index 3. This part is not inside FG at all, right? It sits outside the area of play. This part is my parallel index 1, parallel index 2, right? This part is where A is in the orange diagram. It is A, and this part here is the vertex B. So this part and this part is also not in the in FG, okay? But the orange part is in FG. Now, the thing is in FG, fine, but I'm now looking at FH. So is the H actually selected inside FH? Is it selected in my spanning subgraph? Well, it turns out that if a boundary edge, which are the orange ones here, if it's inside FG, then it is actually also in FH. Okay, so the argument for this is very simple. Let's look at any of the boundary edge. Let's say this one. The fact that it is a boundary of the polynomial means on one side you have a room inside the polynomial, on the other side you have a room not in the polynomial. So the inside one is part of the connected component. The room that is not in the polynomial is not in the connected component. So the white edge between them must not be selected in H. If the white edge were to exist, how can this vertex be not in the connected component, right? So the white edge is not inside H. Therefore, in forming the transpose, the orange edge is inside FH. Simple. Okay, so therefore, if you look at the boundary, we will have a path in FH moving from the left side to the right side, or from A to B. This means FH is good. I mean, you might argue that, okay, I mean, it might not be so easy to see this since the polynomial here is quite simple shape. But if you look at a more complicated one and just try and trace the boundary, you will see very intuitively why this argument works, right? So I'll leave you to try this out on another or as many polynomial as you want. But hopefully this is also another proof that I think is really cool and quite clear as well. So to finish off the proof, remember we need to find the number of ways. So G has this number of edges, n squared plus n minus 1 squared. This is just a counting argument. And so there are 2 to this number of ways to form spanning subgraphs. And from the lemma, half of them are good. So there are this number of good spanning subgraphs. Sorry, this should read subgraphs and not subgroups. Now let's fix the assumption that we make at the start, which is that we don't care about the configuration of A and B, the doors inside A and doors inside B, but actually the doors inside A and B can be any configuration. Because once I have a spanning subgraph, I just need to start at the correct place in A. Remember, my S can be in any of the first row and G can be in any of the last row. I just need to start in the correct place in the first row and in the correct place in the last row. Doesn't matter whether the doors inside are all locked or unlocked. Doesn't matter whether it's locked, unlocked, whatever combination. So there's 2 to the 2n minus 2 ways to anyhow do the doors inside A and B. So the final answer is just the product of the 2, which is 2 to the 2n squared minus 2. Yeah. So that's all to problem number 5. So I hope you enjoyed the APMO problems that have been presented. Do stay tuned to the channel for more math videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.